Hey everyone, and welcome to my intermediate guide for structured PvP in Guild Wars 2. This video is meant for players looking to climb up to and through the gold division. If you're new to the game and haven't already watched my beginner's guide to PvP, click on the link here to check it out. By the end of this guide, you'll have a better understanding of decision making, positioning, important combat tricks you'll need to know, how to use the terrain to your advantage, and more. Popping up on screen now is a list of all the topics that are going to be covered along with the timestamps for each one. Each section builds on the last, so I would recommend watching in order so you don't miss anything important. And first things first, rotating according to your role is one of the biggest deciding factors in whether you'll win or lose your matches. I want to emphasize very heavily here that rotations can make up for differences in mechanics, to a certain degree. Rotating properly means that your team is always going to be fighting on an even or advantageous playing field. And it is one of the primary ways a single person can carry a match. Keep in mind, Conquest is extremely dynamic, and adjusting your rotations based off of what's happening at any given moment is crucial. Since this is the intermediate guide, I will give you a full, basic explanation to how you want to rotate for each role. The advanced guide will go over these in more detail. Starting with the side noter, this is the most mechanically intensive role. In order to carry as a side noter, you will need to have solid mechanics and decision making. It is an extremely active, reactive, and very independent role. You will not be relying on your teammates that much to win your fights and be effective. In this section, I will give you everything you need to know to climb up to and through gold as a side noter. If you're the only one on your team playing this role, you will want to capture home at the start of the match. If no one from the enemy team contests you, you can rotate to mid to help in the team fight. However, if you are contested by one person, fight for the node. If you win, head to mid. If you lose, which either means you died or ideally were able to disengage, you have two options. You can either push the 1v1 again if you're confident in your ability to win or decap the node in about a minute. If not, flip the map and push far to side node there. If you continue to be pushed by an enemy or build you cannot beat, continue flipping the map this way. Do not continue fighting losing 1v1s. Some people might have a bit of an ego regarding this, but it is one of the quickest ways to throw a match. If you are pushed by 2 or more people, immediately disengage and give up the node, unless your teammates match numbers. If one enemy stays behind to cap and the rest leave, you can repush the 1v1 following the steps I laid out previously. Afterwards, if your team wins the mid fight, you're uncontested, and aren't in any threat of getting decapped, capture mid so your teammates can rotate out to match the enemy respawns at far. Then, sit in between home and mid in order to remain close enough to prevent a decap on either node. If you see an enemy trying to neutralize a capture point your team controls, follow them to prevent it. If you're one of 2 side noders, whoever is more confident in their 1v1 ability should push far. This guarantees a fight at the start of the match and denies the enemy from capturing their home node. This strategy forces your team to potentially face a 3v4 at mid, unless the enemy opts for a 1-3-1 or 1-0-4 split themselves. In this scenario, if you push far, try to win the 1v1 or play for a neutral cap. If your side noder at home isn't also contested at the start of the match, he'll be able to push mid after about 20 seconds and make the fight a 4v4. As for the team fighters, rotations are pretty simple. You're going to either push mid or far at the start of the match, depending on which opening split your team decides on. If you win mid, check to see if your side noder is contested at home. If he's contested by one person, a roamer or a damage dealer should rotate out to help him, while the rest of the team fight stays around mid. If he's contested by more than one person, the tankiest, non-support team fighter should stay to cap mid while the rest rotate out to help. If your side noder is uncontested, let them cap mid while the rest rotate out to far to match respawns. If you lose the team fight at mid, everyone on respawn should regroup in base and push out to home together. This gives you the best chance of winning a fight and gaining a numbers advantage to help you retake the rest of the map. If you are outnumbered at mid, the best thing to do is play safe until your team matches numbers. And finally, the roamers rotations. This is the most flexible role. You can rotate to any of the 3 nodes, but must keep these things in mind. First, always look for opportunities to decap enemy capture nodes. If you're matched by an enemy side noder and will not be able to decap, leave and go back to the team fight or plus your side noder if necessary. Second, if your side noder is ever 1v1ing on an enemy controlled capture node, plus him and stay just long enough to secure the decap. Only stay in the 2v1 if you are confident you'll be able to kill the enemy side noder in less than 20 seconds, or need to help your side noder disengage and reset the fight. Third, it is your job to decap the enemy nodes before and during fights over additional objectives such as Capricorn, Bell, and Skyhammer. Knowing when to go for or prioritize map mechanics is a key part of winning your matches. In this section, I'm going to give you guys the most straightforward ways you'll want to deal with map mechanics in gold, as well as tell you which maps favor certain team comps. On Battle of Kylo, do not use the trebuchet. There are no circumstances in gold or below where using the map mechanic is more beneficial than you being at any other node. This map favors comps with access to range damage and mobility. Roamers are strong on Kylo. On Forest of Niflhel, do not go for the beasts. If you are a roamer and the enemy goes for the beast first, you can try to steal it when it gets to low HP. Aside from that, completely ignore them. They are the lowest priority in the entire match, and you should always focus on holding a capture node or helping out in a fight. The stat buff you get for killing them is negligible, and the 25 points you gain from killing them is worth way less than not getting decapped or winning a team fight. If you go for beast first and it gets stolen, you get decapped, lose a team fight, or die to the beast, you are actually hard throwing your match. This map favors teamfight comps. It is easy to control 2 nodes on Forest. Be careful when playing 3 nodes because the enemy has 2 ways to leave their base, and it is very easy for one of them to respawn and decap your home node. On Legacy of the Foefire, if the enemy team pushes your Lord, equal numbers from your team should go defend it. If the Lord is low, your support can help heal it back up. However, if the enemy just started their push, damage dealers are generally the best as they can counter pressure the enemy and prevent them from killing the Lord. As for Lord pushes, if the enemy is about to win and the 150 points you'll net from killing the Lord will win you the match, go for it. You do need a decent amount of time to finish the Lord off if your team doesn't push with you, so certain high damage classes may want to prep the Lord by breaking down the gates and killing the NPCs in front of the Lord when there are opportunities to do so without getting decapped or losing a fight elsewhere. This map heavily favors teamfight comps and tanky builds to hold mid. Capturing the middle node, Graveyard, is extremely important. This node is the largest in the game, is exceptionally difficult to decap, and usually requires the attacking team to fully wipe the defending team in order to do so. On Temple of the Silent Storm, always contest meditations if possible. If you are solo and have to choose between contesting Tranquility or Stillness at 8:30, choose the former. If you're torn between watching a node or contesting Stillness, prioritize Stillness when the enemy has 2 or more capture nodes. And finally, decap enemy nodes before contesting an objective if possible. This map heavily favors roaming comps. If your team has high damage, high mobility builds that utilize teleports, 1 or 2 side noders, and access to range damage, you'll do well on Temple. Control the top half of the map if possible. It will give you easier access to Stillness and Trank when it comes time to contest them. 104 and 203 splits are pretty common on this map. On Skyhammer, prioritize winning Hammer if either team has 2 or more capture nodes. With this objective, you also want to decap enemy nodes before contesting it if possible. This map favors a traditional comp. You want the ability to push all 3 nodes if necessary while having a strong teamfight for Hammer. 1 side noder, 3 teamfighters, and a roamer will do well. On Revenge of the Capricorn, decap enemy nodes and kill enemy players before contesting the objective. The bells are worth more for every subsequent capture, so while it may be okay to give up the first one as it's only worth 25 points, contest the following bells. Capturing multiple bells is extremely beneficial, and the team that does this successfully will likely win the match. Capricorn heavily favors a strong AoE damage teamfight comp. Being able to split 3 nodes with a roamer or side noder with mobility is nice, but not necessary in Capricorn. Controlling mid and home is very easy to do on this map if your team is winning the teamfights, and a strong teamfight comp with lots of AoE will have an advantage when contesting Bell. On Eternal Colosseum, Sword is incredibly powerful for snowballing the enemy team. Shield is good if your team has control of the map and wants to hold nodes better. However, if you have to choose between the two, go for Sword over Shield. This map heavily favors classes with ports to quickly contest the artifacts. Daredevils, one of the Thief elite specializations, are incredibly powerful on this map. If one team has a Daredevil and the other doesn't, they are likely to be quite favored to win unless the opposing team's side noder or roamer has exceptional awareness. Mesmers, Revenants, and Elementalists are quite strong on this map. Side noders are also harder to kill on Eternal Colosseum if they're using terrain due to the way the points are designed. As a result, a strong teamfight comp is also very beneficial, as it's easy to spawn camp the enemy team after a wipe or 2. On Jin's Dominion, do not go for the buff. Completely ignore it. This map also heavily favors teamfight comps. Slow, tanky side noders like Minimancer are also quite strong, as the distance between the points are very short. This means it is easy for classes to quickly rotate around the map, and thus, teamfight comps can easily control 2 nodes as a result. This next section will teach you when to engage or disengage a fight. If your team is heavily losing a team fight and the enemy is relatively healthy, do not push the node. Never rotate into a losing or lost fight unless you are 100% confident that you have the tools to guarantee you rally your teammates and are able to swing the fight around. If you aren't, then immediately disengage or rotate out to decap far if the enemy controls it. Your dead teammates will respawn and be able to fight over home again if it gets decapped or if the enemy fully caps it. If you're in a team fight and you're losing it, try to help your teammates peel out to regroup. If you are unable to do so, split off to decap while the enemy team is distracted with your teammates. Now let's talk about target priority. Focus supports first, especially if or when they have the resurrect utilities. There's no point in downing one of their other teammates if you don't have a way to deny the res. Prioritize the team fighters next, and the side noders and roamers last unless they're extremely low and you'll be able to quickly down them in a few seconds. This section will cover basic positioning. Do not stand in AoEs on the node unless you have very strong defensive cooldowns that will let you completely mitigate the incoming damage. Try to play towards your weapon's strengths. If you're ranged, try to maximize the distance from you to your target and make it harder for melee builds to hit you. If you're melee, try to stay as close to your target as you can. As you're climbing up to and through the gold division, start using about face and stow weapon. To use about face, hold W and left click. Next, alternate pressing your about face keybind and right click. If you're holding right click when pressing about face, your camera will spin, so make sure you're just tapping them. Also, start getting used to stowing your attacks. You don't have to use this keybind in fights when you're first starting out. Just practice getting used to which skills you're able to cancel and which ones you aren't. Now we're going to talk about an incredibly useful tool to help you mitigate incoming range damage. Putting a wall in between yourself and a ranged attacker will make it significantly harder for them to damage you. Start practicing this in your games when you're getting shot at. Here, I'll explain the term no port. As the name suggests, no port spots are areas of the map where teleports are rendered ineffective. An easy way to tell if an area of the map is a no port is if it is completely inaccessible from any direction without first requiring the player to jump. No port spots are great to use against classes that have access to targeted teleports, such as Thieves and Revenants. They will be unable to teleport to you as long as you're standing in these locations. Here are some additional helpful things to keep in mind. If you down someone in a team fight, your focus should be to immediately cleave the downed body as much as possible, unless you have a way to safely stomp the body without it getting rallied or resurrected. If you get it down but the enemy support is nearby with the res utility ready, interrupt it if you can. CCs tied to boon removal such as Steal on Thief are great for this. If you don't have any CCs, continue cleaving as much as possible, and do not bleed rangers. They res very fast in downstate. Cleave or stomp them once you down them. As for classes with mobility in downstate, do not stomp. If you try to stomp, they will likely move out of it. And last up for the intermediate guide are combat tricks and mechanics. Baiting cooldowns is going to become an important part of combat as you progress through the ratings. Any highly telegraphed skill that isn't an animation lock is a great way to bait defensives from the enemy. You do this by stowing the skill before the cast time finishes. If you're able to get a dodge out of the way for free, fantastic. Don't use this too much though, or you'll lose out on a lot of pressure over time, as when your weapon is stowed you aren't attacking. Also, only attempt to bait cooldowns if you know the enemy is looking at you. Don't sit there stowing behind them if they're not going to see or fall for it anyways. Interrupting skills also becomes increasingly important as you're climbing the ranks ladder. The ones you should focus on now are going to be res utilities and healing skills. Most healing skills have a blue glow around the player when they're casting them, so use this as an indicator for when to cast and interrupt. You'll need to be quick though, as most heals have a cast time from 0.5 to 1 second. Don't worry if you're unable to consistently land your interrupts and important skills when you first start out. Since this is the intermediate section, the point is to expose you to new mechanics and start guiding you towards the correct decisions you should be making in Conquest. Now, if you find the video helpful, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell to be notified the moment I release more content. I also stream live on Twitch during the week, so if you want to come hang out with the community, watch some high-level live commentary on every class, or ask me any questions you might be wondering about, click on the link in the description below, or go to twitch.tv/blindside_TV.